Good evening, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get going. Welcome to the Oregon City's Solar Town Hall. And we are streaming this live. It's a new service that Oregon City can provide. David Knowles, our capable operator here this evening, so that people at home can watch it via the web. So the rule for the road will be that you need to use the microphone, because that's the way that it will be easiest to hear. So we'll try to use it. Yeah, there's still some seats over here. We'll try to use it, and as we do questions, we'll have you use it too. Good evening. I'm Alice Norris. I'm the mayor of Oregon City, and I will be your facilitator this evening. This is really an opportunity for those experts on the solar highway, the world's largest solar highway, to talk to you about the project, answer any questions you might have. And I know some of you have done extensive research and have been in touch with me, providing me with information. And I know many of you have come with questions, concerns, and I know some of you have been to the West Linn City Council meeting. I think there's some spots right over here. So when you take the microphone, and there's a sheet going around so that you can sign up to speak. When you take the microphone, please introduce yourself and give the town in which you live. And if you live in Oregon City, how many of you live in Oregon City? Looks like almost all of you. If you'd like, you can give the neighborhood in which you live, too. Maybe that kind of helps us know the perspective from which you come. This is a project that we don't get to vote on, but it certainly impacts us. And so it's very important for us in Oregon City to make sure that we had an opportunity to do a town hall meeting, at least one, so that our citizens could get our questions answered and address our concerns. So ODOT and PGE have answered questions, I think, as you've submitted them via email and other ways, and then so face-to-face, of course, here this evening. I think all of you probably know, but 2 nights ago, the West Linn City Council, in whose community the proposed project exists, did put essentially supported the project, but supported going forward with it, supported looking at the trail that accompanies it. So again, gave a green light to continued forward progress toward citing the project in West Linn. But as you all know, there are impacts to Oregon City. We as taxpayers, there of course are cost impacts, there are visual impacts, and other impacts that you've eloquently identified in many communications with me and other people in the community. Before we start, we're very honored to have State Representative Bill Kennemer, our representative here this evening. So, Bill, thank you for coming. And he's been helping with answering some of the questions. And then we also have my colleague Doug Neely, one of our Oregon City Commissioners, who's over here. We have some city staff available this evening. Where? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. And Jim Nacita, another colleague of mine on the City Council. We have City Manager Larry Patterson over here, Terry Bankhead, who many of you have communicated with, who helped organize the evening, and Colin Miner, who's not staff. He's a reporter for the Oregonian. So, and then you are. Oh, Tony Roberts from the Oregon City News Clackamas Review. We're glad that you're here. It's important to get the information out, and appreciate you coming out on such a hot evening to talk about something hot, which is the solar highway. I think that we should jump right in, because you've come and we value your time. We want to make sure you get your questions answered. I hope you were able to pick up sheets outside which have a lot of information on them, visual as well as written. And I think to start off, I want to introduce Lynn Frank, representing ODOT, who will lead off and give us kind of an overview of the project and let you know what's happened since West Linn has approved the go-ahead with the project, and other information that may be new to you. Lynn.
Alice, thank you so much. I think that we should. Well, welcome once again. See, it seems like there are very few faces out there I haven't met before, Ed and Debbie and many other folks that we spend a great deal of time with. How many of you have actually been out to the I-5205 site? And the West Linn site? a few of the others, but quite a few still. That's I think, a good foundation for us. I know the mayor's been out there, and several of the council members have been out there as well. So that'll be a good foundation. We'll talk more about that as we go on for the evening. Let me briefly introduce myself. I was director of the Oregon Department of Energy back in the day when Ed Lindquist was a young but already influential legislator as a majority leader. And on June 9th, as I recall, 1975, you passed the energy policy for the state of Oregon that was so prescient that it endures unchanged even today. That policy said that we shall not be left with a legacy of vanished and depleted resources with significant social, environmental, and economic impact, that we should instead develop permanently sustainable energy resources, and that the state government should exercise leadership as it is doing tonight. We'd like to talk with you about that policy. That policy has stood well for the years, but in and of itself, it is simply words. It is time to translate that policy into action, because otherwise the vision has no meaning. And we'll talk about how we might do that. Before we do, though, let me introduce Lynn Averbeck with ODOT. She's one of the project directors. Unfortunately, Allison Hamilton, who is the Solar Highway Project Director, is a little bit under the weather, so to speak, with the heat. But we are in very capable hands with Lynn Averbeck. Lynn is primarily responsible for the environmental and land use issues, making sure that we deal well with every consideration that we have and work very closely with local communities. There was a question expressed the other night at the West Lynn Town Hall meeting about whether there would be environmental impact statement. There will, in fact, be a review that will be completed, and she'll be responsible for making sure that is done and done well, because the project makes no sense otherwise. Also with us tonight is Mark Osborne from Portland General Electric. Mark is an extraordinary fellow, the happy kid, as I call him. He, like Allison, is from Newport, and he now works for Portland General Electric, where he heads distributed generation. Mark is very, very knowledgeable about the utility system, interconnection issues, and other kinds of requirements. And so I think if we have really tough questions, I'll bump those over to him tonight to help with those. Christine Miles is with ODOT as well. She works on public information, so any of the media, if you have any questions, go talk to her. She'll give you good answers to them at the other side. Let's talk a little bit about this project, and I know many of you have heard the story before, but I think it's useful to share it with everyone just so we have the same basis as we move forward. We have that energy policy, which has endured for a long time, that we talked about a moment ago, that Ed joined his other colleagues in passing. That policy, the bill, was Senate Bill 483. It was carried by a young legislator at that time named Ted Kulongoski. Ted, of course, is now governor, and he's directed Oregon state agencies to secure 100% of their electricity needs from renewable energy resources. ODOT is different from many other agencies. There's a constitutional amendment that was passed. Ed, again, worked with that as well, that dedicates the highway fund to the construction, reconstruction, operation, maintenance, and administration of the transportation system. So it can't go out and pay more money for renewable resources. Utility offers a wonderful program that Mark's responsible for, where you can buy green power, paying a slight premium for that green power, but ODOT cannot do that. The Attorney General's office understands they need electricity to light the highway system, but paying more for that, no matter how laudable the public purpose, is probably not going to be consistent with that constitutional constraint. So what ODOT needs to do is try and find a way to secure that energy at no greater cost than it would otherwise pay. And that is what it was able to do at I-5205, working with Portland General Electric, not only as the utility, but as the developer. We were able to bring that project together with Oregon companies using SolarWorld. SolarWorld is the largest manufacturer of solar panels in the United States. It's located in Hillsboro. It's the #1 fastest growing company in Germany. But they came here, and they're making these ingots out there at that plant that are going into these panels and providing high-paying Oregon jobs to Oregon workers. The power that's produced by the panels is direct current, DC. It's translated into alternating current through an inverter. The inverters are made by PV Powered. PV Powered is located in Bend, and it's the largest manufacturer of inverters in the U.S. It was in front of PV Powered that Barack Obama stood in May of 2008 and said, I want to replicate across this country what is being done here in Oregon, and which is a message which we very much believe. Using these Oregon companies and Oregon workers, the project was built at I-5205 within 135 days after the governor and then CEO Peggy Fowler from PGE announced the project. Mark went out there with his compatriots and shoveled off the snow on the corner of the panel to turn the meter so it could be commissioned, and it was placed into service on December 19th. There was an interesting article in the Oregonian today talking about the impact. Elena from PGE has to deal with that, the impact of the heat wave that we're having and the wonderful air conditioning on the electrical system. When we have heat like this, we don't have water that's fueling the dams, and the wind turbines tend to fall idle. But bright and early this morning when the sun came up, that solar facility at I-5205 was churning away and producing power that's going in to support the community and the transportation system of Oregon. So there is value in the energy policy that Ed put forward of having a diverse supply of energy resources, and that's what solar power is, and it contributes greatly to that. Surprisingly, you don't think of Oregon as being the place for solar, and yet 2/3 of the state has more solar resources than Florida. Interestingly, among all the utilities across the country, PGE is one of the top 10 in solar generation and has consistently been one of the top utilities, if not the top utility, in the supply of renewable resources to its customers. We're blessed to have a very progressive utility with which to work here in Oregon. We are taking a look now at moving on to the next step, having built the first solar highway in America. We're now taking a look at building additional solar highway projects. What we're contemplating is expanding the I-5205 project, adding 1.5 times as much at I-5205 to supply power for the transportation system. The Baldock Rest Area, which is the rest area between Portland and Salem. The northbound side, there's property on the back corner that can support about 1.5 megawatts, which would produce just over 1.5 million kilowatt hours a year. A project that could go in there as well. And then we're also taking a look at the request of the city of West Lynn at the hillside that ODOT owns on the other side. Because of the constitutional restriction, ODOT cannot go out and acquire property for solar. And so it has to take a look at the property it has and said what would work well. And that site would actually work very well. It works very well in a couple of respects. First, it faces south, which you need for a solar resource. Second, it's of a size where you can get economic scale. PGE was delighted to do the first project working with us at I-5205. They said it's a wonderful project. They'd never do it again because it was too small. And the economics of it made it very, very difficult to be cost effective. And so we need to begin to turn toward projects of where we have economic scale. And so the larger projects we're looking at within PGE's service area would meet that requirement. And that's what we need to do to make them much more cost effective. The projects are financed through a very creative approach. The projects rely on federal tax incentives of 30%, state tax incentives of 50%, accelerated depreciation, and utility incentives that come from PGE, go through the Energy Trust of Oregon and back to the projects. And by using those incentives, the power that's delivered out the other end on day one to ODOT is at no greater cost than they would otherwise pay for power from the grid. Through the approach that we're looking at here, though, PGE is also able to meet a statutory requirement that obliges them to have a certain percentage of their power, 25% of their resources by the year 2025 must come from renewable energy resources. Now, in California has chosen to have their resources developed by a company from Baltimore, Maryland, using workers from someplace else, installing panels made someplace else, using inverters made someplace else, to take power off of the utility system. What does that do? It passes on costs to the other ratepayers who left on the utility system. Oregon has not chosen to do that. We have chosen instead to work very closely with our utilities. We did on the first project. The state of Oregon itself uses something in the order of 550 million kilowatt hours a year, which is a lot of power. And if that power were taken out of the utility rate base, the rates for the rest of us would go up dramatically. The state of Oregon, ODOT itself, is a ratepayer, so we want to have the lowest rates possible. A project like this enables ODOT to get power at a very low cost through the utility system, renewable energy resources, and yet at the same time helps PGE meet that statutory requirement. So in a sense, it's a win-win, not just for ODOT, but for all PGE ratepayers. How many of us here are PGE ratepayers? I will tell you, and it's funny that Allison Hamilton is the project director. Within 3 days, I think, after Jim Pyro became CEO, he was sitting down with her, having a cup of coffee, talking about developing solar resources. And I can't think of another utility in the country where that would have been true. They're an extraordinary corporate citizen. And there has been no decision made on going forward projects, but if we have the opportunity to work with them again, we'd be blessed. They're an extraordinary company, and they do what they do very, very well, which we appreciate very much. Let's talk specifically about this project. The project that we're looking at West Lynn would be a project that would produce something on the order of 3.2 million kilowatt hours a year. That's about 3 million kilowatts in capacity, 3.2 million kilowatt hours a year. That's about 1/6 of the 18+ million kilowatt hours a year that ODOT uses in PGE service area. They use it to light the interchange at the bottom of the hill. They use it to light the highway system. They use it to light their facilities that we have throughout PGE service area. This solar project would supply renewable energy resources needed to sustain that system. The benefits of that go far beyond just the energy being provided as well, though. There are also what they call environmental benefits. That solar system would be equivalent to the saved carbon emissions of taking 1/3 of the vehicles in West Linn off the road. And a very significant reduction in carbon emissions. It would be equivalent to putting something like 19,000, the 3 projects we're looking at, 19,000 acres of pine trees. The projects we're taking a look at, and one in Southern Oregon, would be equivalent to 19,000 acres of pine trees being sequestered and set aside. So they have other benefits beyond just the energy they provide themselves, which is very, very important. Those benefits are also providing value back to PGE ratepayers because of the environmental benefits that are being accrued there. So the project is significant not just in terms of the energy, but also in terms of those environmental benefits. The project on a going forward basis would be one like the first one that relied on Oregon manufacturers, Oregon workers to produce the panels. We would rely on Oregon workers to install the panels and to maintain and operate the system, because it's very important to the governor that the investments that we make don't go to Shanghai, China, but instead go back to Oregonians. And that will be the focus of these projects. It'll be a project built by Oregon for Oregon and put into place by Oregon workers. And so it is very important in that respect. I want to make sure we understand where we are in the scope of the project, where we are specifically with West Linn. What West Linn approved the other night was not approval to go put a shovel in the ground and start building the project. What they said was they've heard some very, very good questions from Debbie and many others, Ed, and they want to make sure that we have very, very good answers to those questions. And so what they agreed to do was to work with us in good faith to go get those good answers to those good questions. It makes little sense to invest potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in public money to go get those answers if there's no intent to move forward or to consider it in good faith. That's not what the council said. We want to consider those, but we want to make informed decisions at the other end of the process. Work with us. And ODOT is pleased to be able to do that and be responsive to that. There were good questions being raised. Concerns are expressed about the trees and the impact on the site. We want to complete tree surveys. We want to look at what that impact is. Look at the impact on biology, environmental, stormwater, geotechnical. These are studies that Lynn's going to be responsible for, and we'll have comprehensive reports put on those. And if at the other end ODOT looks at that and says this just doesn't make sense because of the environmental impact, the geotechnical impact, or stormwater impact, the project will not go forward. It only has to make sense, and the project only should go forward if indeed it does make sense. So those studies are going to be done probably over about the next 3 to 6 months. Okay? And then at that time, we'll be in a better position to be able to make decisions about how much it's going to cost, how are we going to finance it, and over what schedule would we be able to move forward sometime during 2010. And the intent would be, if it's at all possible, that sometime in 2010 we'd be able to cut the ribbon on the world's largest solar highway project right here in this community. There's an interesting parallel between having that project and having the Willamette Falls Generating Station. Mark, why is that?
Well, basically they're both renewable, and they would potentially be PGE resources, renewable resources.
And when did the Willamette Falls Generating Station go in?
Ooh, boy, that's a tough one. 1889, I think.
And the Willamette Falls Generating Station then was hooked up to the nation's first long-distance transmission line to send that power into downtown Portland. And so here, right in our communities, we're going to have one of the first generating facilities in Oregon, and we're also going to have one that represents the latest in modern technology. SolarWorld's a remarkable company, but so too are the other solar manufacturers that are coming in Oregon. There's been discussion about the latest in technology. Technology advances are going on virtually as we speak around the state. Allison Hamilton and I met just this last Monday with Sanyo to hear about their advances in technology. And the key for all of us going forward is to take a look at what makes sense on a cost-effectiveness basis and what's commercially available. And so while there are technologies that people are looking at down the road, what we'll be looking at as we go forward with these projects will be the latest technology that's available and commercially available and economically available for us to put in place today. And it would be something like the kinds of panels that you're seeing in place today, or some variation on the silicone panels that we have in place. Okay? When we talk about solar power, someone on the site, and I don't remember if somebody was here tonight when we were out at the West Lynn site the other day, said, well, you're going to create solar energy here. I said, no, we would use solar energy here. The sun creates the solar energy. And in fact, in 1 hour, the sun supplies enough energy to the Earth to meet all of our energy needs for an entire year. And it's just a matter of using the energy that we have. And that's what we'll be talking about doing with this kind of technology at the other end. So it isn't a matter of creating, it's a matter of using and making good use of that renewable resource, and that is what ODOT is proposing to do in this case. The latest panels that SolarWorld is developing have larger silicone cells, so they're a bit larger. And so of those, we'll be looking at something just over 13,000, about 13,600 for a project with that capacity. Panels of this size, this is the size we have at I-5205, there'll be about 17,000 of those as well. Now, I know people have been concerned about the visual impact from Oregon City. Again, that was an early question that was raised. I should put in context, with each one of the questions that have been raised, we've tried very hard to go back and to make sure that we provided thoughtful responses to those questions. We had the folks that do the renderings and the designers go back and take a look, do the pictures from the backyards of the folks at Oregon City, and so we could take a look and see what the impact would be from this community of those solar panels on the other side of the river. And we have those pictures here tonight. Concerns were also expressed about the impact reflection, and we've had some more work done. In fact, it was just completed today, so those of you who have picked this up outside can see this issue is specifically addressed by the Good Company. And what they've done is reflection is a function of angles. And so they've calculated those and what the impact could be on people living on the side of the bluff. And if you have a very tall tree house, something in the order of 4,000 feet, it would be a problem, but otherwise it will not. And that's what they addressed in the context of this piece here. What we've also endeavored to do is put together what we call FAQs, frequently asked questions. These are publicly available on the West Lynn website. And these will be updated on an ongoing basis. West Lynn is also contemplating having a sign-up. So people can put in their email addresses, and as new information becomes available, it can be sent right out to you, so you have it and you're notified about that. And so as there are updates to this or updates published, those will be available to you and anyone else. But we've tried to go through in a good faith, research questions and provide good solid answers wherever we can. Questions about health impacts, electromagnetic fields. We went back all the way to USDOE, to the head of the U.S. Solar Program. They went to the National Renewable Energy Lab in Boulder, Colorado, and gave us guidance and direction about that. The closest home to the solar array would be about 280 feet away, and from 250 feet away, the electromagnetic emissions from the inverters would be equivalent to standing in front of your refrigerator. In other words, it's not a significant issue at that site, according to USDOE and those who should know. But those kinds of issues and questions are addressed in the FAQs, and those are updated on a periodic basis. And we want to make sure that we do as well as we can in answering the questions that are raised, and we address those there. For those who have been concerned or interested in the public process, we have also put together a comprehensive outline of the timeline. Bear in mind that the project has not started. It has not started. And the kind of public involvement process that will be incorporated in there will go on. And so what we're doing is public involvement in anticipation of that project. Someone raised the question with the LCDC folks about whether Goal 1 was being honored with the public involvement process. When they actually saw what had been done, they said, you are over the top. And we are and will continue to be. All right? So there's a lot of information out there that's available and will continue to be available as the studies are completed. And we've looked at the questions, looked at the issues, come up with thoughtful responses to those. We'll make those available as well all the way through the process. And so you will have those, Mayor Norris, and the commission members will have those. We'll make sure Terry is wonderful, and we'll keep her updated on an ongoing basis so that everyone has access to the information. And anyone who has an interest from any community can sign up on the West Lynn website, and you'll be able to get ongoing updates about where the project is and what we're doing there. Barry, did you have other questions before we begin?
Why don't we go ahead and let the citizens chime in? I think it's gratifying to hear that, we're all about citizen involvement in Oregon City, and that citizens can still have an impact on the process. So it's not a closed process to this point. In fact, as I've been watching it from the beginning, citizens already have had some impacts on the project. So I think that's very, very important to keep in mind, so that we don't feel like this is a powerless meeting that we're holding tonight. So there's a sign-up sheet that's gone around. Where is it? Okay. I think what I'd like to do is take this. Did you sign up because you're here or because you thought you were speaking? Because you're here. Okay. Well, we'll do it differently then. No. That's fine. I think we just didn't make that clear. So I guess we'll just do it on a hands up and call on basis. And again, identify yourself, and then we have the people here who can answer your questions. And if they cannot, I'm sure they'll get back to you. That's what I've seen in the email trail that's going on. So, who wants to ask the first question? What I'd like to do is take this. Did you sign up because
Thank you.
you're here or because
Pete
you like
Steinkamp. I've been in Oregon City for over
you're
20
here.
years.
Okay.
When I first moved here, I had solar panels on my roof. I took them off eventually because I always had leaks every year.
No.
I sent them down to my dad in California. They were much more efficient in California with the more sunny days. Will the cloudy days here impact the efficiency of these solar panels? And if so, why not have them in a more sunny location, eastern Oregon?
So, who wants to ask the first question? Do you turn on?
Excellent question. The question was, would we be better off by putting these panels someplace else? And the short answer is no, and I'll explain why. And our good representative can help with this as well. Oregon law allows customers to develop renewable resources on their own property for their own use within the utility service area. And so while there might be a great resource available to us in far eastern Oregon,
Continue talking. I'll just clip it on. Then you won't have to worry about it.
there might be a great resource available to in far eastern Oregon. It would be outside of the service area where we have most of our need. 38% of ODOT's energy use comes in PGE service area. So under Oregon law, if we're going to develop renewable resources, we need to develop it within that service area. But let me offer some perspective. When Allison Hamilton first envisioned developing a solar highway back in 2007, the year before, Germany, a country the size of Montana with the solar resources of Alaska, produced 150 times the amount of solar energy as Oregon. 150 times the amount of solar energy of the United States. The solar resource that we have here in the valley works very, very well. And in fact, the project that we have at I-5-205 is performing at or above expectations, Mark? Above expectations. Is performing very, very well. So in these areas, we can in fact have solar and it can perform well. So the reality is it works very, very well here. That's not to say it wouldn't work well as in other parts of the state, but frankly, Pacific Power and some of the other utilities haven't shown the level of interest that Portland General has. Portland General has a commitment that has been matched by no other utility. In fact, I should tell you they are the only utility in the country to develop a project like this. It's a remarkable organization. Those two reasons, one, a matter of law, and two, a matter of a company that's willing to make that kind of commitment. Those are the reasons why we're here. And also, that's where ODOT's needs are. And so we need to match those up. We could get more efficiency, but we have very little need or very little use in those areas.
Okay, next question. Someone was over here. I forgot. Who was it you? Sure.
Well, I have several questions for both PGE and oh, I'm sorry, I'm Ted Anderson. I live in Oregon City. I'm Amanda Court. And I was looking at that, who really benefits from the visual pollution that we're going to be looking across the river at. And I looked at Portland General Electric Corporation, and maybe you can answer some of these questions or dispute what I'm saying. The virtually no land cost is going to accrue to PGE for this site. The $20 million plus cost for fully building this thing will be offset by virtually 100% of tax credits, grants, and that type of thing. And then also Portland General Electric Corporation could use the project as a carbon offset for their polluting Boardman plant and saving millions of dollars in carbon tax if cap and trade passes. They will also be able to bill 3.2 million kilowatts per year at probably no cost other than transportation and maintenance. What do we get out of it? What do the taxpayers of Oregon get? Oregon Department of Transportation, to my understanding, when they receive a bill from PGE, it says your rate is $10,000 a month, their monthly bill. What will happen if this project is built, you will get a bill from PGE that says green energy, $10,000 a month. So there's no savings to the state in that. What do we get out of it? We can brag that West Linn can brag that they've got the largest solar farm in the world for a certain amount of time, and also as you mentioned the other night in West Linn, that West Linn could receive up to $1 million in stimulus grants from apparently through the federal government to build trails and an interpretive center over there. But the feeling I got when I was over there the other night, that's going to be a tough road over there to hold. And that's just a few of the thoughts that I have. And then also on the feasibility studies and the environmental studies, who's going to pay for those? Is it going to be the state of Oregon, or is it going to be Portland General Electric as they are receiving the benefit? Thank you.
Okay. Let me go back and answer the questions and help answer those questions. And in fairness, no decision has been made about whether PGE will be a partner as a developer in the going forward projects. But let's talk about what the benefits of that are. There are a couple different ways we could go on a project like this. Again, ODOT could turn and hire the company from Baltimore, Maryland, to install Chinese panels, and our tax dollars could go to Shanghai to put good people to work there. That's one approach. And that's what California is doing, and that's what many, many other states are doing. Meanwhile, PGE has a statutory requirement, a law passed by our representative leaders that says we want you to go acquire 25% of your energy from renewable resources, and PGE would have to go out and invest that $25 million to build renewable energy resources. You can't do it all out of wind because you've got to have the transmission lines, you've got to have the location, you've got to have the resource, which on a day like today you don't have, and yet PGE we still expect them to keep the lights on, keep the air conditioner going, so you have to have diverse resources. I don't know that we're better off. Who's going to pay that bill if they have to go develop it otherwise? You're going to pay that bill. This notion of PGE, you cannot distinguish between PGE and the ratepayers because they are one and the same. I'm working in a proceeding that's going on now with the Oregon Public Utility Commission, and that's a question they want to be absolutely confident on. And they have obliged PGE to submit hundreds of pages of testimony and facts and figures and everything else to clearly demonstrate that one person benefited as a consequence of these projects, and that person was you, the ratepayers. So the Public Utility Commission, the folks that are involved in this process, are absolutely committed to making sure at the other end of the process, the people that benefit through this process are the ratepayers. This is the lowest cost way for PGE to develop those renewable resources. If you want them to go down another path, they can do that. But it'll cost you more.
Okay, the question is, just because we need to, our vast TV audience needs to know, the question is, why this location?
Again, this location is distinguished from many, many others. In the respect, because of its scale, you can put in projects that have economies of scale, which is very, very important. Because being able to go out and put a project on there versus small projects on rooftops throughout the countryside, there's a very significant difference in those costs. And again, those costs are ultimately going to be borne by you. And so it's in your interest for them to go out and develop the most cost-effective projects, and economies of scale are the most cost-effective approach. So the sites that we're looking at here are the sites that ODOT already owns for transportation purpose, and will provide the scale that they need to be able to do large economic scale projects that will ultimately benefit. These projects have to benefit. In fact, I helped write the principles that the PUC is going forward with. They've got to be able to demonstrate that for the not only for ODOT, but for the utility and for the ratepayers, that these are competitive with all other options for fulfilling renewable resource standards. And again, this approach of developing these projects is the most cost-effective way for them to go do it. You'll be able to take a look at another option. The legislature, in its wisdom, passed a bill called the feed-in tariff. And under that approach, the development of these renewable resources will be borne entirely by you. And you'll be able to compare those two approaches down the road.
Just a second here. I would like to have PGE respond to that same question.
Okay. Well, let's see. I had down a couple of things. As far as the land cost, well, I want to make something clear first. ODOT is developing the solar resource for their own needs. This is really no different than if you wanted to put, solar arrays on your roof. And it's our job to kind of help you do that. And we have a program called net metering, which allows a customer then to benefit from the generation. So basically, the sun's power powers your house when the sun's available, and then when it's not, PGE powers your house. And so there are times of the year, like in the wintertime, where you're taking more power in from PGE than maybe your solar panels could deliver. And with net metering, you try and balance that out so that that over the course of a year, the amount of power that you generate with your own solar panels is equal to the amount of power that you might get from PGE, so you net it out, so it's basically a net zero. And that's the goal with net metering. But there are times where, say in the summertime like this, where you may be producing a lot more electricity than you can use, and that electricity goes to PGE as a bank, if you will. So we store it for you, in a sense, and then give it back to you in the wintertime. And that's what we're doing basically for ODOT. It's you're using PGE as kind of a bank. Now, ODOT, when they want to do this type of net metering program, they have the choice of a number of different developers, just like you do. There are numbers of solar developers in the state right now that would love to help you put solar on your roof. And so ODOT is interested in getting potentially a good deal from one of the developers. And PGE at this point hasn't decided whether we would be that developer or not. There's a considerable amount of things that we have to go through. We're looking for the outcome of our current, like Lynn mentioned, kind of our current request for recovery from the projects that we did already last year. So, but if we were to become the developer, we've talked to ODOT, and there would be a land cost. So we would have a fee that we would have to pay to utilize that property. So there is a land cost to it if PGE is a developer. If someone else, like SunEdison, for example, if they decided to be the developer for the project, then they would have to pay ODOT that land cost. As far as tax credits go, the legislatures, both federal and the state, have put in wonderful tax credits to promote solar energy, and so there are a variety of companies that want to take advantage of that. So for the I-5205 project, U.S. Bank was the major investor in that project, and so they contributed the majority of the funds, and then they were able to take advantage of those tax credits. At this time, PGE's appetite for tax credits is not there because we have pretty much used up all the ones on our wind projects already. So we would need a third party if we were going to be the developer, just like we did with the I-5205 project. As far as the carbon offsets, we don't know yet what the legislation will do in terms of that. I mean, obviously, we want to try and mitigate as much carbon as we can, and so that's something we'll strive for and we'll continue to watch. But by developing solar projects, either helping our customers do it or PGE being directly involved, that is definitely a benefit. As far as the 3.2 million kilowatt hours, that all goes to ODOT. I mean, this is ODOT's project, just like it would be if you put solar panels on your roof. And Lynn, I think you can answer the feasibility study questions.
Lynn, as well as Mark reminded me on the feasibility study questions. There will be extensive feasibility studies that are done. In part, some of those feasibility studies are beginning now under ODOT's auspices. Those will largely be financed with federal funding that's been made available for the solar highway projects. On a going forward basis, there will be other studies that are done and developmental work that is done, and those will largely be financed through the tax credits and the other resources we've talked about as well down the road. But what distinguishes, one of the distinctions about working with PGE versus SunEdison or one of these other third parties is if we were able to build the relationship with PGE, the one thing they bring to the table is the money that they would have had to have spent to go buy that energy someplace else. And so that helps reduce the cost of the projects to ODOT and the other people as well. So that's an added benefit of working with the utility that we can get working with no other party.
My name's Kathy Pierce. I'm from Oregon City. My question goes to the benefit of the homeowners. I'm a realtor. Mentioned that the other night. I have been hearing the word NIMBY used a lot, and I really I don't think that's the situation here. We are talking about people on the bluff in West Linn and in Oregon City who have paid a premium for their properties. And when this goes in and the views diminish drastically, it is going to impact them. When you talk about the benefit of this solar highway, are you also concerned at all about the value of the property that these people are going to lose? So that factors into it any way you look at it. That and the fact that for 18 years now I've been supporting those view values, and it really puts me off that after supporting those values and being cautious enough to tell clients that, yes, things could change in a day, but they bought Riverview property, and they're not going to have it much longer. And I can't wait for the first one to come back to me and say, Kathy, my house isn't worth anything near what you told me it would be worth in 3 years. I can blame it all on the economy, or I can say, well, gee, you got those panels down there. I just think it's something that really needs to be looked at.
And this is a concern that's been expressed at some of the earlier meetings as well, and I think that it would be fair to say that for those on the public side of the equation, all of these concerns are very, very important to them, not just that one, but the other concerns that they've had on the other side. What's interesting to us is that we look at these kinds of issues here in America, in Oregon even, as much as we pride ourselves of being the green state. We are, in reality, at a very early stage. Terry just came back from Europe and Germany, and one of the areas you went through was called what?
Bavaria.
And what do they call it? Solar?
Oh, Solar World.
Solar World, where you found solar panels on historic homes and lodges and everything all across. Freiburg is known as the Solar City, and others, and so in many areas around the world they value the kinds of commitments, and in fact there are tours being arranged. Mark is going to be taking a Greyhound bus full of people out to see some of the panels on the other side. So it's going to be an interesting question for us to take a look at, because in many parts of the country and the world where these projects are going forward, people have come to value those and place added value on those at the other end. But we are concerned about those issues. That's one of the reasons why the money's being invested to do the renderings and to better understand the impact. And will be one of the considerations going forward. And I think as the Oregon Transportation Commission makes its decision, they need to understand that those are issues and concerns, and those will be shared with them. Hi.
I've been following this obviously very closely. I'm Debbie Brent, and I'm a resident in Oregon City. And I wanted to start out by saying I'm not against solar energy. I just don't believe that the project of this size, which is the world's largest solar highway that's being proposed here, more than up to 17,000 panels, more than 5 football fields if you put them just side by side. But we're not talking about putting them side by side. They're going to be in rows, so that would be even more size. Cutting up to 300 trees, and then the possibility of phase 2, which is double the world's largest. So picture more than about 11 football fields in size. ODOT's told me that their other projects are in farm and highway areas, not communities. In Germany, the current world's largest solar highway was still under construction in 2009 and is built on a tunnel. The articles only refer to it being near a community and not in a community. I'm concerned about things such as any future impacts and health hazards for people living next to the generation of 3 megawatts of power. There are toxins in the panels that must be recycled, and they say that they will be recycled by the manufacturer, but who's to say the manufacturer will still be here in 25 to 40 years or more? I'm concerned about environmental impacts, as there are, they said it was like 40 acres or something like that, loss of up to 300 trees, wildlife area. It's loss of wetlands for deer, birds, small animals, and possibly a rare butterfly. I have pictures from the site at I-5. There's barbed wire fencing, buzzing noises. There's some reflection off the panels. I can't imagine that wildlife will even be able to get into that area. There's some concerns about whether the cutting down these trees will re-aggravate slide problems for that side of the hill, lead to erosion or water runoff problems. And then there's a couple other concerns I have. We found out that they're not subject to Westland's land use process, which is highly concerning, because I'm wondering who's going to oversee the process if Westland is not, if they're not required to go through Westland's land use process. Why here? The ODOT representative, Lynn Frank, actually said at one point that that we don't want to put this in Christmas Valley because no one will see it there. 144,000 people a day drive by this site at I-205. And I also want to stress this is $20 million for the equivalent of powering 170 homes. The other thing is I invited ODOT to my house in order to kind of give them a true representation of the view from our side of the river. And I'm kind of actually disappointed that in the view that because it's much farther away than actually the actual view is, and everybody in this room that has been at the bluff can tell you that. So all these pictures here, because I went to all these sites with ODOT and helped them to get these pictures, they're not correct. That is not the true side of our side of the river. I brought pictures tonight of the actual views of the property, and I think that you should probably take those pictures out of circulation because they're not correct. Can I bring up? Sure, thank you. For anybody that got the packet of pictures, this is actually the true site from Deerbrook Drive. And then this is I-5 and 205. So this is some barbed wiring. This is 600 panels here, 600 panels. They said that was about 2 football fields long. So, and these are people right here standing here, but they're in a distant shot. But that's 600 panels, 2 football fields long. So this is going to be 30 times larger. So try and picture 30 times larger. That's just phase 1. This is some glare that I was noticing off the panel. This is an inverter that is a box that converts the energy, and it does make a loud buzzing noise if you're standing next to it. There will be a number of these on the site. I don't know. I haven't got an answer from ODOT yet on how many of those will be there. So, and then your packets didn't include. On the City of Westland's website, here's some additional pictures of the view. Here is the current aerial view of, these are artist renderings of the project. This is the rendering of 17,000 panels. So I doubled that and put those panels on this aerial view. So that's just my personal artist rendering of 34,000 panels.
You're pretty good.
There. I just cut out and pasted. And then these are side views of the project that I thought were important since you didn't receive any of those in your packet. But if you go to Westland, there's even a few more pictures, as well as the views of our property, which are really not correct. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll take those.
Okay. I'm not quite sure where to start. The concerns that Debbie raised at the outset are indeed important concerns, and those are many of the concerns are on the list. One of the things we talked about the other night with Westland City Council was going through and just making a list of all of the questions and concerns that have been raised by the citizens. That's what we're going to do, and one of Lynn's tasks is going to be going back through and making sure that all those issues are addressed. As you might well anticipate, many of those same issues are of great concern to ODOT. The first question that Carla Keller, who heads Region 1 maintenance for this area, said, you got to convince me that it won't be an issue from a geotechnical standpoint. And the district manager said that water, we need to be concerned about water, stormwater issues. And so all of those things are going to be part of the studies that they're going to take a look at on a going forward basis. And again, if they come back at the other end and say, issues are going to be worse, we can't deal with those things, and it doesn't make sense to go forward, ODOT's not going to go forward with the project. So those concerns are there. They're going to take a good hard look at them, and those studies are going to be shared with you, just as they're going to be shared with Westland and with Mayor Norris and the other folks on a going forward basis. And we need to make sure they're good answers to those very good questions, and we don't disagree with those at all. I will ask Debbie, the people that did the work on the photos, to take a look. Can I have this? Or you want to keep it? Okay. Because one of the things we asked them to do was to use visually accurate representations. You have to. I have a wonderful camera that my wife gave me to take beautiful pictures of grandchildren that has some extraordinary capabilities. But one of the things I recognized is that you have to be sure and use the right lens and the right focus to emulate the eyes. And that's one of the things we asked a good company that did the photos to do. We'll make sure that they did that. Do you recall what you used on these pictures?
I just took their photo and blew it up to actual size.
Okay.
And but at the scene, a big company took room. The person that didn't see him be a photography expert. He just had a little flash camera, and I told her that if we just took the picture, it would be farther away than actually being efficient. So we just got pictures. They turned out being much farther away than that.
Okay.
Thanks,
There
Debbie,
is-
for
there is
doing
a
that.
specific lens that one should use.
Well, thank you for doing that work.
Yeah.
It's, actually, I think the next person was you. Is it okay?
Thank you. My name is Ralph Groner, and I look at the picture, so I'm going to change the tone since Wes Lynn cut me off. My main point I wanted to raise, I want to raise here. I may be the only one who feels this way, but for once in my life, I know the mayor does, because let me look at the picture behind you, PGE, and you will see where Mr. Eastham began his electrical program in this area, and you'll see the very area on the left there where John McLaughlin and Pendleton Woolen Mills, the Jacobs, I could tell you every building, my hobby, my love. I was born and raised right up here on this side, but I played all my life on the property that you're now talking about because I grew up in Lower Slobovia, which kids in Lower Sunset, millworkers kids called Lower Slobovia. I only got one good grade in high school. I was a juvenile delinquent, and it was history. Later in college, all were A's. But I have had a vision of this corridor, and this mayor, not to pump her up, is doing exactly what I've dreamed of. And you have one side of the river, West Lynn, with a lot of newcomers. And I noticed that the other night, without the sense of history that you can't find anywhere else in this state other than where you're looking out over. Right there's Lot Whitcomb's boat, the very first, right there. Below are the Chinook Indians. Gallipoolia's above, 3,000 years of tribes. PGE should be interested in the history. They were part of it. This became PGE, the first city for the kind of kilowatt hours that we sent. The first electric train, Kanema right there with the old park. What's my point? George Abernathy, the first territorial governor, his home is still here. The Rose Garden home is still here, thanks to Mrs. Powers. The Rose Garden for newcomers was the territorial governor for 4 years on Holmes Lane. I could give you 8 or 9 of these. And I view something bigger and different and out of balance, and I'm all for solar, so are the folks here. I truly am. I fight in the legislature for solar projects, as Solar World knows, to make all public buildings in Oregon energy efficient. That was my bill, 3199, that Jefferson Smith had in. So I don't want anyone arguing with me that I'm against solar. I'm all for it. But the truth is, I believe that we're out of balance and we have a different picture. And if you go to Germany, where I was this last year also, remember that in Germany it's totally paid by the government, one way or another. I know how it's paid. But two, they have a sense of history that took place long before solar. And this corridor, about 4 miles, coming from 205, you're in a perfect spot with your solar at the end of the freeway. We all love that. That's great. But to come into the center of the Oregon Territory, which was 5 states, parts of Canada, and to just drive by it and say, now we're going to have 6 football fields of solar for future generations and my grandchildren rather than enhancing the movement to the river, which we have on the east side. We're building down on the river. We're going to have people sitting out in the river. We're going back to the boats. We built a dock for boats. Ultimately, in terms of tourism, we should be bringing people, and we ought to have an interpretive center on that project that's better than the Lewis and Clark interpretive project. The PGE could join in. The Betsy tax credit could go in. And quite frankly, rather just offsetting the environment, we will have enhanced the history, just like Germany, just like Europe, and we would have said this is where it all began in the entire Northwest, right here. Let's enhance it. Let's give it the view not only to tourists, but something my grandchildren and your great-grandchildren can be proud of. The only reason I get upset about this is that I've seen Oregon City take a lead. I want to compliment them on the historical significance and beauty and environment and positive energy created by that. And now I'd like to see it grow so that the west side of the river participates in that, and that we, right overlooking with ODOT's property, realize this is the hub of the very beginning of this entire territory. Thank you.
You thought of running for the legislature?
I'm Maria Graf, and I'm from Oregon City. And I just, the other evening, I noticed that everybody, almost everybody that spoke in West Lynn was not from that area. They all lived someplace else, and nobody really could care what's going to happen on that one hillside. Some people probably don't even go down 205 or come from different directions or whatever. But I also know about Germany, and I know that people in Germany would not put solar panels one after another next to freeways that are traveled very much, because Germans are very, extremely proud of Germany. They would not cut down 300 trees. They don't even want to cut one tree, much less 300. And the beauty of the area when people pass by on cars like 205 is very, very important for everybody. I also, why does this have to be the biggest or twice the biggest in the world, not even in the United States, but in the world? And you have the whole 205 to do it. So why not use a different area and make smaller panels, smaller section, instead of one with 17,000, make 10 of them along and make each of them much smaller, so it is not such a huge, eyesight for people in Oregon City.
Your response?
Why not use a different area and make smaller panels?
For those and for Ralph and others, the program in Germany is supported by a feed-in tariff, and again, that's very similar to what the Oregon legislature just passed. And the feed-in tariff, how many of you know what your electric rates are? Call it out. 6 cents, 8 cents kilowatt hour? Feed-in tariff is 50 cents a kilowatt hour, and it's paid entirely by ratepayers. That's your choice. Now, when you start looking at the smaller projects, that's the impact, is that the cost of those projects go up. I will tell you that one of the inspirations for the solar highway projects is Dr. Josef Pesch, who in fact put solar panels along the highway system just south of Freiburg. And if you like, I can share those photos with you. He's a wonderful gentleman with whom we've become pen pals and who's very supportive of what we're doing here. But in Freiburg and other cities, in Germany, in France, in Switzerland, Australia, England, and other countries, they are putting these solar panels along the transportation corridors in ways that are very visible and very apparent. So the size of the project, again, becomes a question of cost consideration. When the Renewable Portfolio Standard was adopted, the legislature said, PGE will develop these resources, but we don't want a significant adverse rate impact. These projects could be done in much smaller sizes at much greater cost. But that's not the policy direction that the state has set for us, or that the ratepayers have expressed at the other end. So what we're trying to do is accomplish those statutory directions as well as we can at the lowest cost to the ratepayers of Oregon. And 50 cents a kilowatt hour is not going to be a practical option here.
Hi, my name is Paul Edgar. I'm from Oregon City, Kinney area. I'm concerned about some of the statements that have been made about the financial aspects of this. One of the statements that we kind of forget, when I was out at the Westland site, I asked a direct question about to you and others that were there about who was going to pay for this and how this was going, where the money was going to go. And I was told, and I thought I heard something completely different tonight, that ODOT cannot receive any real benefit from this because of Oregon Trust, Highway Trust lands, that in fact that the generation of the electricity coming out of these solar panels would all go back to PGE, not reversing the bill or allowing ODOT to receive benefit for it. It all goes to PGE, and then ODOT buys the electricity no matter what back, but they are just buying it, but they statutorily, they cannot buy green electricity, so they're buying electricity no matter what. So we get into this question of win-win. Where is the win-win for ODOT in here? We're spending money. Oh, when I say we're, I'm a citizen of Oregon. And I'm worried about the taxpayer because we're investing into this. We're giving money to PGE or to banks, whoever who is going to be handling the offsets. And I'm just wondering where we get this real bottom line benefit that people refer. The meter's not reversing to ODOT. Is that not true?
Did you have other questions? Or
That's it.
Let's try and go back, and Alice, maybe you can help me make sure that I cover all the questions we have. If you go out to the I-5, did you go out to the I-5 site? And were you there when Mark went over and took us over to the meters? Yes, I did. I know Debbie was taking pictures in this part of the presentation. One of those meters is ODOT's meter. And every single kilowatt hour that comes off of that project, every single kilowatt hour that comes off of this project will be billed to ODOT. We can walk up anytime, day or night, look at that meter, read what that actually is, or we can go online and see what it is minute by minute. And so that power will all be directly attributable to and purchased by ODOT to light the transportation system and to power the transportation system. And that is what is required by Oregon's Constitution, and that constitutional requirement is met.
And that cost, no.
And again, the way the law is set up, the reconciliation actually occurs on an annual basis, but ODOT will pay for every single kilowatt hour that is produced by that system.
And they'll be paying market rate.
They'll be paying market rate. Below market rate for green power, because green power will be 8 to 10% more. So on day one, ODOT will be receiving a benefit, and on day one, PGE ratepayers, of which all of us in this room are, will be receiving a benefit because that's the lowest cost renewable resource power that they're going to be able to develop for future resources.
Okay. There are more questions on cost. Okay.
Well, I live in Deerbrook, and it's going to be right in front of my house because that's the only thing I'm going to see. It's going to look like a black hole, and the value of my property is going to go down, and so that means the whole Oregon City, their property is going to be lower because when the appraisal is done, if our value is down, all of the other properties are going to be down because they're looking at our values.
This property value question is really intriguing. Oh, Lynn Averbeck, I'm the ODOT. Yeah, and yeah, we understand that. I need to get Debbie's pictures because we want to make sure we get the right renderings done. I actually have a question, and that is, because I'm trying to figure out how to get that addressed. I don't want to just say we don't think there'll be an impact because we don't know that without anything backing it up. So the question I have for people who are concerned about that is what kind of analysis would satisfy you to show you that there wouldn't be, or that an impact to your property value, or that the impact is minimal? Just out of curiosity.
I bought the property before this came up. And so we like the view, we built the property, and now you're going to be, destroying the view that we wanted to enjoy.
So I am looking for some feedback about that, because I need to get that addressed. The view issue, we are having some more analysis done on that, too, by people who do that sort of thing. So we are going to be looking at those issues, and any ideas you have to help me address that concern, any ideas you have for the types of sort of technical analysis that you think would help you and help us, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. ODOT is willing to do that. So if you have a visual that you'd like them to see, give them a call so that we can make sure that the renderings are, that we understand how it's going to be.
Joyce Gifford, resident of Oregon City, and I am in total support of this project. And those of you who are afraid of your views, I want you to consider what it was like before they built 205. And there were a lot of us that were very concerned about what our views were going to look like when they put that scar across the land. When they built the Trails End Highway out to Malala and took that ravine and impacted views from my parents' house. And at first we kind of, it was a really ugly scar. Trees have, grown up now, and it's not as bad as it was before. But I think we need to kind of take a longer view. Yeah, right at first, things are going to look different. When they built all those houses over in West Lynn, and they took down all those trees, and if you look at Debbie's picture, which is really nice, trees covered that entire hillside. And they tore them all down and put in houses, which I don't think is a really pretty sight. And I would have preferred the trees, and I would have preferred things the way they used to be. But we need to have progress, and I think that the thin blue line that we're going to be seeing from Oregon City when we look across, because that's kind of the vision I get from the pictures, that thin blue line, we're going to get used to it. And it's, I don't know, I don't live up in those houses, but that's what I'm seeing. And, all I can say is that we got used to I-205, and I think we would get used to these solar panels, too.
Someone from this side?
I'm Dennis Muir, and I live on the bluff. So, and although some of this may not impact me, it'll impact me at least part of the year. But I have two concerns. One of my major concerns is you're talking about X amount of panels, and then in your next breath you're talking about doubling the space. And that doesn't sit well, number one. Number two, you're antagonizing a lot of people here by building the thing there. And three, what alternative sites of scale have you identified in this area? As I understand, it's an area type thing that you're dealing with. So how many other places can you build such a thing without antagonizing a lot of people? Thank you.
You talked about the Baldock, behind the Baldock Rest area. Are there others?
Yes, and let's answer the question real quick. The project we're talking about today is this project. It's the 3-megawatt project. Debbie's been talking about the larger project, and I think it was actually mentioned at the Oregon City meeting, but that is not the project we're talking about today. It's this one. The reality is that ODOT is of the perspective that they're going to need to be able to take advantage of all areas within the PGE service area where they have property and can develop a good solar resource. And so where they are finding large areas, and that includes the Baldock Rest area, the I-5-205, they can build out this site and others. They will be taking a look at those. I am not aware of any other site of this magnitude in the area where they need the energy as they do here in PGE service area. Again, this is 1/6 of the energy that ODOT needs to produce from renewable resources. They're going to need to find 6 other, or the ability to develop six times as much throughout the service area. So they're exploring every reasonable option.
Hi, Linda Mueller, Oregon City. My question, and a lot of people haven't asked it about, but Debbie touched on it. For me, it's the health issue of 3 million kilowatts or megawatts of electricity being in a condensed area. And so each panel individually, or even a few on housetops, I can see just like electricity running through our homes. It's not dangerous. But when people live close to big power plants and things like that, there's tumors and different health issues that eventually affect them, and maybe not everybody. In your feasibility studies, will that be one of the studies? And what are the health issues? Has anybody addressed those at all?
Let's talk about this. Some questions were raised. Debbie asked a question earlier, made a point earlier, for example, about hazardous materials in the well, let me go on, in the panels. And so as an organization like ODOT would move forward, they're going to be looking for systems that do not include hazardous materials. And so those kinds of value-based specifications are in there. In terms of the impact from electromagnetic fields and others, yes, those kinds of questions, they will be taking a look at. And we will have answers for. As I mentioned before, we went all the way back to USDOE, to the head of the National Solar Program. They went to the national labs to provide some of the early answers for us. PV Power is doing additional research around their facilities. And so we do want to address the issues very, very well. But again, it is important for you to keep in mind, as we talked about when we were out on the site, the West Linn site that day, the type of facility we're having here and the type of voltage that's going to be going out through the lines is far different than we're talking about in the high voltage transmission systems that are going throughout the region. Mark, let's let Mark answer. Just a moment. And tell who you are again.
Okay, this is Mark Osborne from PGE. Just to give you a perspective, you may be familiar with the Kaiser Sunnyside Hospital, and they have 3 backup generators that will be twice the amount of energy that this solar panel will use. Yeah, if you look at a hospital, the amount of energy that a hospital consumes is about twice the amount that these solar panels will generate. So a big hospital like Kaiser Sunnyside. So that gives you a perspective. So the amount of wires and electricity being used in the hospital for the MRI units and everything else would be half the amount that the solar array. And in the area where the energy is being used is kind of a much smaller area than where this will be spread out. So the risk is very, very low in terms of the electrical side of things. These panels are, that panel, for example, is like 175 watts. So it's like about 3 or 4, conventional light bulbs. And so each panel is not doesn't produce that much energy in its own, but that's why you need so many of them. But they're spread over a large area, so it's not concentrated. And the inverters that convert the electricity will be scattered over. How many acres are you talking about for this property? It's kind of,
well, the full property is 43, but the project size would be some fraction of that.
About 10 or 15, maybe 10 acres or something like that. So the inverters, which are converting the electricity from AC to DC, typically there would be about 6 of those, or 12, 6 to 12. PV powered, for example, the largest they make is about 1/4 of a megawatt in size. So you'd need 12 of those inverters, and they'd be scattered around that area. So you really actually have it pretty well spread out, so there's no concentrated. And like Lynn had mentioned, the fact that the nearest house is quite a distance away from any of the electrical issues that could occur. So really, there's no safety factors. I mean, the power lines that run up and down your street are much larger than carrying electricity than, say, the solar panels will generate. So I just want to kind of give you a perspective that it sounds like huge, because when you say the world's largest, you're going, oh my gosh, this is a monster. But in terms of the amount of electricity it produces, it's not really all that much. It's half the size of a hospital might use, for example.
Question over here.
Hi, I'm Sandy Lindquist, and I live in the Rivercrest Neighborhood Association, or area. I have 3 questions, and I'm trying to understand some of what you said. It's my understanding from what you said that PGE may not be the developer of this project when it's all said and done. Did I hear that right earlier tonight? That it could be someone that has China panels, or it could be someone else, but it maybe wouldn't be PGE. Then when he asked the question about why here, you said, well, this has to be in PGE's service area. Did I misunderstand that? That's the one question, because if that's the question, I mean, we don't even know that PGE is going to be the developer of it, yet we're saying it has to be here because it's in the service area. My second question is, and I'm really trying to learn about cap and trade. It's pretty complicated, and I don't exactly understand it, not near as well as my husband, that's for sure. If I understand it correctly, it's possible that Congress may pass a benefit to people they can get trade-offs for, like PGE has a huge fine that they have to pay over in Boardman, as I understand. They've been assessed a fine for pollution, and they have to pay this by a certain amount of time, if I am correct. If they do this project, do they get credits to pay towards that fine off of this project? And my third question is, what is the drop-dead date for ODOT to have this project be commenced in case they are going to get federal stimulus dollars, or for wherever they're going to get their credits or whatever they're going to use to pay for it? They must have some drop-dead date in mind. And I heard you earlier tonight say that, the studies could take 3 to 6 months. But does ODOT have a date in their own mind when the drop-dead date is to get this project going? Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back through. We've got the question about does it have to be in PGE service area? We've got a question about cap and trade benefits, and then we've got a questions about drop-dead dates. Okay? And if we have much more heat like this could be very soon for me, I will tell you. I said,
he was making it.
This could be quite soon for me. Now, if you get to talk, does Ed get to talk too?
You bet.
Okay.
She had 3 questions. He's got 12.
Great. Tag team is not fair. There's only one of me. And he's been working me over all day long. All right. Let's talk about PGE service area. The law says that when you develop a project like this, it has to be on your own property for your own use, and it has to be in that utility service area. So even if we had, which we're not going to have, a company from Baltimore, Maryland install Chinese panels, it would still have to be in PGE service area, because by law, to use that net meter to offset your needs in that area, it has to be in that service area. We are not going to use a Baltimore, Maryland company to install Chinese panels, because we are going to use Oregon companies to develop these projects, whether we move forward with PGE or not. And again, I will tell you that if we are fortunate, we will have PGE as the partner going forward in this project, but they have not yet made that decision. And so we have to be in PGE service area because of law. In PGE service area, because that's the way the law is written. In terms of cap and trade, there's another piece of the puzzle that we should explain. When you develop solar energy, there are what are known as environmental attributes that are associated with renewable energy resources. You have energy, but you also have the environmental attributes. Those environmental attributes are associated with the carbon offsets as well as producing solar power. And those environmental attributes have value. They have value. And they have value in the marketplace today. In fact, if you put solar panels on your home, you could go sell that power to someone else. Those environmental attributes, to still use the energy that comes off of those. Now, I mentioned before there are utility incentives that will go into the project as well. Under Oregon law, those utility incentives are part of a public purpose charge. That shows up on your bill every month, and you pay that 3% charge, and part of that goes to an organization called the Energy Trust of Oregon. Part of that goes back out to you for energy efficiency programs that Ralph is very familiar with and has lobbied very effectively for. Way to go. But part of that also goes for renewable energy. Okay? So on a project like the West Linn project, they will invest hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, the Energy Trust of Oregon, out of the public purpose charge that you paid. Okay? Those environmental attributes then that's the quid pro quo. They will give you that money in exchange for the environmental attributes. And those environmental attributes are retired on behalf of Mark who? the ratepayers.
And does that go then to do anything over at Boardman? None of these environmental things. and
Oh, wait,
credits
Sandy.
will go over
Yeah,
there.
why don't you ask? Sorry.
Does that make sense? I mean, none of these attributes or these solar credits or whatever you want to call them will be used to offset anything that you have to pay for in Boardman.
No, wait, we're going to
I mean, solar back.
Okay, well, right now, when we talk about environmental attributes, what we're talking about is renewable energy credits, also called green tags. And so in the state of Oregon, that's the only environmental attributes that are really has value and tradable at this point in time. Now, there's several laws that they're looking at for carbon offsets being the same kind of thing as the renewable energy credits. But those laws have not passed yet, so we don't know yet what the value is going to be placed on those credits. So at this point in time, we don't know what the carbon benefits would be for this project, but we do know what the renewable energy credits or green tags would be, because it basically equates to the number of megawatt hours. So 1 megawatt hour that's produced from the system is a green tag or a renewable energy credit. And so I can get into a long discussion of it, but they actually have a bank in Salt Lake City where you bank your renewable energy credits, and it's called Regis. And so it really does have value. People trade them and sell them and hold on to them. But in the case of this project, when the Energy Trust invests money in it, all of the renewable energy credits go back to you and back to PGE for on behalf of our customers. Well, in a sense, yeah, because of in the case of the green values that you do get, it becomes a bank. Like I said, though, the Energy Trust holds them for a period of time, so it'll be a while before they actually do get retired.
But in effect, you do receive value for those, because the alternative, again, PGE would have to go acquire other resources. And so they do get, as a matter, correct me if I'm wrong, though, Mark, doesn't DEP get, as I recall their policy, it's all environmental attributes?
At this point, I think it's just the RECs, but it may be carbon credits down the road, but like I said, they're not in place yet.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The drop dead dates.
The drop dead date.
Mm-hmm.
Good question on that. To the extent that there are ARA, economic stimulus monies involved, those monies need to be committed in the not too distant future, but they can be held for some period of time. My expectation is that ODOT would have to make a decision to move forward or not by the first quarter next year.
What about PG's decision?
That's you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think, well, we have to look at a number of factors if we're going to become a developer for this type of project. And actually, we are preparing a proposal for our board that would allow us to not only become a developer for ODOT's projects, but for other large projects in our region. So if you look at the two projects that we did last year, we did the Prologis project, which is a thin film rooftop solar project of about 1 megawatt, and then we also did the ODOT project. So it kind of gave us a view of working with a private company and working with a public entity. So we could gain knowledge on this development process, and also working with different investors, like in the case of U.S. Bank that we did for the ODOT project. So we're learning, and we're doing analysis, and like I said, we're working on a board presentation, and if that gets approved, then we hope we can work with ODOT going forward on this project, and then also with any of you, with your businesses, in terms of putting solar on your roofs or on your property as well.
And at the other end of the process, PGE's time frame will be one and the same. because if we were to move forward with them, it would be as part of that agreement, and that agreement would go to the Oregon Transportation Commission for their approval. Yeah.
Okay, more questions here?
My name is Gary Redaway. I live on Ogden on the Bluff, and we've discussed a lot about looking at it in the daytime. I want to know what it's going to look like at nighttime.
Okay.
It's not going to disappear.
It is not going to disappear. One of the things we talked about the other night at the West Linn City Council where you were was that there would likely need to be some lighting, security lighting in the project. And so the question is, how would that affect you and how would that affect the people up the hill as well? And there are different ways to handle that lighting, but I will tell you that we're at such an early stage on the project. I don't have the answer to that question. It's a good question, and when they do the designs, they can better answer that, better illustrate that than we can now. But we are concerned about that, and that will be a consideration. I live up the hill from Salem Electric down in Salem, and their yard lights are my night light in my house. And they could very easily put blinds on it, so that would not be the case. And I can tell you that I know that ODOT certainly has great sensitivity to the communities here, more than it might be otherwise apparent, Alice. But we do have great sensitivity, and we will work very, very hard, I'm sure, to make sure that these issues are thoughtfully addressed. And Lynn is making notes to make sure that we don't forget.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Ed, you ready for your 12 questions?
12.
Well, first of all, I want to say that Lynn is a great salesman. This guy could sell solar-powered refrigerators to Eskimos. But nevertheless, you do a good job, Lynn. But I want you to understand something as we go through this, why people are concerned and interested. When I first went to the legislature, PG came to me and said, we've got the answer to Oregon's power future, and we're going to build Trojan. And the ratepayers paid to build it. The ratepayers paid to build it and to tear it down. And we'll see if a court decides that we may get our money back. Then there was a decision to build the coal-fired plant in Eastern Oregon. And that was only going to be online when everything else was down. Well, of course, I don't blame PG for all of that because the power needs have increased, and now it's online full-time, and another plant similar to it up in Montana. And they're the worst pollution makers in the state of Oregon in its history. And so we question those things. Then I remember when the president of PG came to me when I was an elected official and said, I want to talk to you, Ed. We're talking about making PG a more solvent company. We want to join Enron. And Mark, I'm sorry your pension went away when that happened, but those are the things that raise the questions in the pit of our stomach about this project. And so I guess what I'm really saying to you is ODOT the one that's going to be responsible if anything goes wrong on this project? Is it going to be ODOT, or is it going to be the ratepayers or the taxpayers? Who is going to be the one responsible if something goes wrong in this project and it isn't done well? And I think that's really the question kind of in everybody's stomach that's here is, I don't hear those things yet. Now, maybe we'll hear that when you go through the process, and I know that you're going to go through a good process, and I appreciate that. I don't know how you're going to address it back to us. It will be public meetings or what. But those are the kinds of things that we all have those questions about, and we don't have. I've had a great deal of trust in ODOT in the past, but not on everything. I can show you projects that ODOT's done that are similar to the ones I just mentioned that PG's done. So that's the kind of thing we need to have addressed to us, and I hope that your process of explaining all these things will be a completely public process where we can question and answer just like we're doing tonight. But those are the things we question, and I think, let me ask a question. How many of you here are for solar power? Raise your hand. That's what I thought. So the idea that we're not for solar power, it's where it's at and how it's done. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you. And I didn't ask 12 questions. I just gave one statement.
And one big one.
And one big one. Now, I think Ed would also tell you one other thing. I mean, one thing that he would tell you is that he knows that we are going to work with not only him but all of you in good faith as we go forward on these. And Ed, I don't think he would disagree with that. We've worked very, very hard to try and come up with good answers to good questions, and those we don't have answers for, we're going to go get answers for those. At the other end of projects like this, and again, one of the reasons that I like working with a company like Portland General Electric is in a sense you have here this wonderful marriage of two 100-year-old institutions. This isn't IR Solar, here today, gone tomorrow, or a Shanghai company that's dumping waste out in the farmers' fields and offering to sell panels for $1.95, but may not be here tomorrow either. What you've got here are two 100-year-old institutions. And on the I-5-205 project, when they set up this limited liability company, of which PGE was the managing partner and U.S. Bank was the other, we had two pretty prominent corporate citizens here that were involved in this, and that we entered into these agreements with, and we had a wonderful team of lawyers from the Department of Justice and PGE and outside counsel and everyone involved in this. They developed these agreements, and then we sat down at the table and said, we want one more thing. One more thing. We want to be able to reach through that piece of paper and reach out, grab Mark around the throat, and say, make sure this is done well. And so we've got this letter that even goes behind all those agreements. We've got all the agreements in place with all the appropriate clauses and phrases and insurance and provisions and remediation and restoration and everything else that one should have in place. And then in addition to that, we have one more thing. We reached behind those agreements. We said, at the end of the day, you, PGE, are going to be responsible to the state of Oregon. And oh, by the way, we regulate you. Every dollar you get has to be with our blessing and our approval. You have to stand behind that project. And we aren't going to do it unless you agree to that. And when we asked you, you said?
I said we'd be glad to do it.
And DOJ said we could accept that. And we have, frankly, a higher degree of confidence than I have seen the agreements entered into by Multnomah County. I've seen the agreements entered into by the state of California. I will tell you there is no better agreement at addressing those specific issues than the ones we have here with Portland General Electric.
Just a sec. I'm trying to get people to not ask questions first, and then we'll be glad to go back around.
I'm Elizabeth Hurd. I live on Deerbrook Drive in Oregon City. My concern is news and publication on these meetings. Debbie was so kind to pass this out in our neighborhood, so we knew about Monday night and tonight. And we read the newspaper. Today we read the little article about it passed in West Linn. Today, in the free paper in the mail, the Oregon City News, they have an article about it. At the end of the article, they say the meeting is Monday night. It's over with. We hear about things after it's over with. How do we get notified? The post office has everybody's address. Can't media be sent out through this postal service that this newspaper uses? How do people get notified of these meetings? Thank you to Debbie that we're here tonight.
Getting notice out is a difficult thing. It's been up on our website. Neighborhood associations have passed it out. I believe I got a flyer on my door. So I believe ODOT did that. Is that correct? Who did that? Neighborhood association. Okay. Okay, great. Neighborhood associations did that door to door. The article in the newspaper should have been earlier, but it was today. The one in the Oregonian. I saw the blurb in the Oregonian. There's been very good word of mouth, but the expense to mail to 31,000 residents isn't something that I think anyone had in their budget. So we've done the best we can with that, and you are here, so I'm glad that you got that announcement. And I think if it had been cooler tonight, and maybe after the West Linn meeting, it might have even been more people here. But I meant before the West Linn meeting, there might have been more people here. But again, thank you for that. We will continue to try to do our best to get people here. Did anyone have a response?
No, the other thing, I think in both communities, they've been doing a very diligent job to the extent they can. I know you, Shane, with the Oregonian, has been covering these things, been tracking me down day and night. And so the Oregonian's been there. West Linn Tidings, Kara, has been doing a wonderful job, and the other folks are trying to cover these things too. The West Linn website provides great updates, and I believe it's had the notice about this meeting on there for some time on the public involvement timeline.
It's been on our website as well.
And on your website as well.
Yep.
So, and again, this is before the process truly begins. So, we're trying to get folks involved early enough.
What I'd like to do is make sure that we get all the questions answered, and then, and we've said it's till 8 o'clock, so if people are willing to stay after and talk, if you didn't get your questions answered, will you be willing to stay around for a few minutes longer? Okay, that's great. And then I think the question that you didn't circle back with was how will we know the answers to the questions that are, whether research will be ongoing?
Okay.
Can you tell us that?
Okay, I think one of the best vehicles for you will be to put your name on the Westland website, so you'll automatically be receiving updates. Now, at the same time we're doing that, Terry is just extraordinary, and she's just been an absolute joy to work with. We will make sure that she has everything that we have to share with the mayor and the council, and whatever you would like to do on your side to get that information out. I know that both Alice and Terry know how to find me anytime, day and night, and they're certainly welcome to do that if they have any questions, and they will get that, and they have my commitment, which you know, to be available to you if you have those issues. So we will do whatever we can to be responsive. But the easiest way is just put your name on there. When they get that set up, you will automatically receive updates as those updates are made available, and anyone can do that. In fact, I'm going to do it just so I can make sure I've got them all.
Excuse me, Lynn.
Excuse me, Terry?
I just wanted to add to that
We do have information on our Oregon City website. However, because it is a Westland proposed site, Westland really has been the major party in this, and their Westland website has a lot of information. They also have a discussion blog on there that folks can get on and ask questions and answer and have more interaction. We do not have that level of information on ours, but I do have contacts through our website to get you to Westland. So they do have RSS feeds available. We do not, but if you would like to have those direct emails, please go to the Westland site and you'll find more information on there.
And again, I just want to reiterate that I believe both the mayor and Terry would concur, hopefully, that if they have any questions, they have a high degree of confidence that we will get those answers back to them, and we've been trying diligently to do that.
Yes. Okay. Who hasn't asked a question? Okay. No, Ralph has. Oh, excuse me. Let's get to you. Here you go.
Thank you. Mine is more of a comment. I'm Frances Hanna, and I'm from Westland on the Ridge. If it hadn't been for Debbie, the majority of the people that did show up at the meeting would not have known about it. I received the one and only flyer that I am aware of in Barrington Heights in regards to the June 11th and the June 16th meetings. I took it upon myself to do 40 mailings after that to inform my neighbors. So I don't think that the communication is there before the fact. There were articles in the paper after the fact. But in order for the public to have input, we need to know about it beforehand. Yes. So that's what I have.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else from Westland here?
I should add that Westland did put notices in the paper that go out, but I would be the first to acknowledge that Debbie has been an extraordinarily industrious person, and I admire her for that. And right behind her is Ed.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jim Nasita. I'm a resident of Oregon City here.
Is there anyone else from Westland here?
I've been outed as one of the city commissioners of Oregon City as well. Here's my question and comment. I think heat waves like this really are the planet's way of letting us know that it's not kidding around. And I'm very supportive of solar power and in principle of a project like this. I am very also interested in having it integrated well into a populated area like this. And there is a framework to allow that to happen. It's our state land use planning laws. Lynn, you've discussed tonight a lot of laws and a lot of the Constitution, and I'm appreciative of your expressions of your fidelity to the law, as Judge Sotomayor said in her hearings. There's a statute that I haven't heard raised, and that's ORS 197-180. And what that is the statute that requires state agencies like ODOT to comply with our statewide planning goals. And the way it works is basically if there's a city with a land use code, you have to comply with the land use code. However, if a land use code or comprehensive plan does not apply to a project, or it doesn't control the project, then that statute requires the agency to make its own findings with the statewide planning goals. ODOT has its own state agency coordination program, which this statute obligates you to have. You've also got your own state agency coordination program rule in the Oregon administrative rules. My question is, for this project, do you intend to adhere to your state agency coordination program for this particular project? If you're not, my comment is I would encourage you mightily to do so, because this provides you a framework to take all the information, the various studies on geotechnical, on stormwater, on everything, and present it to the public in a very organized, comprehensive manner. It gives citizens the ability to make comments in a framework of the statewide planning goals. Goal 5, for example, Mr. Groner talked about history. That comes under the rubric of Goal 5. Aesthetics comes under the rubric of Goal 5. And this gives ODOT a framework to assemble all of that information, make a decision, and explain the decision by making these goal findings. And by doing so, your own project reaches a level of defensibility and credibility, I think, that it otherwise would not have with the public. So I would encourage you very much to comply with your own state agency coordination program.
Thank you. Good to see you. And I appreciate very much the comments that you're making. Those are things I'm very familiar with. When I was director of the Department of Energy and the original local land use plans were being adopted, I mean, one of the very issues that we addressed was how do you incorporate energy and energy projects in those land use goals. And also state agency coordination and how we work very closely with the local governments and the adopted plans once they were adopted. Ed raised questions the other night about applicability of certain land use goals and provisions. I will tell you that I have no doubt whatsoever that ODOT will comply with the law and whatever is applicable. However, in terms of what the specific requirements from the local land use planning process versus other requirements, those things are still being looked into by Lynn and the other folks. I can assure you, beyond any doubt, though, that all of the issues you've cited will be very carefully addressed, whether through that or some other process, not the least of which will be the NEPA process, for which ODOT has to work under the supervision of Federal Highway Administration, who is watching this project very closely. I can tell you at both a local and a national level, and USDOE, who are involved in the projects. And so these are issues that this one takes to heart, and she will make sure that we cross every I and dot every T as we go through the process.
Wait.
Just as a follow-up, did you go through your state agency coordination program and the NEPA process over at I-5 and I-205?
I didn't work on that project. I asked that same question when I got involved, when they pulled me into work on the bigger project. And the answer was yes. They went through the checklist on all the NEPA categorical exclusion issues, which is the same thing we're doing for the West Lynn site. We're going through all the normal NEPA items, one of which is land use. So we're just starting off on that analysis. We're going to get whatever permits, land use, construction, wetland, whatever permits are required, we will be getting them. So I did have a handout that had a start on those, a list of them, but I ran out so quick I forgot it this afternoon. I'm sorry about that. But any of you have any more questions about that, I'll give you my card and let you know whatever I find out as I find it out.
One of the things we talk about when we talk about these projects is truly we characterize them as RD&D, research, development, and demonstration. And I'll tell you why, because the short answer is we don't know what all of the applicable requirements are. And so that's why we're working very closely with FHWA, with the local agencies, with ODOT, and involving people like Lynn and the other folks at this, because we're expending, obviously, a great deal of time, energy, and effort making sure that we understand the issues that one confronts in developing these projects on a transportation system, and that we've addressed very thoughtfully and well all the issues that are tended to
Yeah, Doug Neely, a resident of Oregon City and also on the council here. A question I've got is, you've addressed, I understand, this issue about reflection. Your picture here indicates direct reflection, which implies there's also indirect reflection. Just was wondering about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you would mean by.
That's your what you're saying. So you mentioned direct reflection.
Oh, we didn't intend to imply that, but I'm not aware of what that would be.
Does anyone want to know more about reflection?
Panels with the light shining on it, and you know how the angle of it is going to be.
The panel, no, the panel. Mark, you've got the angle on me, so you can help me. Maybe Alice can share the mic with you.
Okay. Yeah, the orientation that you want is pretty much due south or a little bit more southwest, and about a 30-degree angle, so that you get the sun. That's the optimal angle for the sun to hit the panel, and so the whole array will be tilted at that angle. And I think one of the nice things about the site that ODOT has looked at is it's a terraced location. So rather than like fill in the whole side of a cliff with solar panels, it's terraced. So you have flat areas. So you'll have multiple rows of these. So the front row is what you would see the most, but the rows behind it you wouldn't see unless you were quite a bit elevated above that ridge. So that's why you get kind of a very narrow profile of it. And then, like Lynn had, the analysis showed about the sun's reflection. It's the whole point is to absorb all the light and absorb as much of the light and not reflect it back. And so that's the way the panels are designed. But if there is some, and there may be, because you do have glass, that angle, according to the study, goes up at such a degree where it wouldn't hit any of your property.
Actually, one thing I tried today that would be fun for you to go back and just try yourself is, because I've heard the issue, and Debbie and others have raised it, so I literally went outside today with a mirror and stood out there and tried to shine it up against my house so I could actually see the light and what the angle would be at 30 degrees. And it's an interesting exercise. But I thought it was very illuminating.
I'm Ardell Anderson, and I live on Amanda Court, and I am one of the people who live on the cliff up there. And actually, the picture you have there, my house views even beyond that. I can see Tigard from my house, and Mount St. Helens. So I'm going to get a real lot of that thing. And can you guarantee to me that there will not be any reflection? And if you can't, do I have any recourse to the ODOT about it? Because I can't, it's, and the picture, one of the pictures was taken from our yard, and it shows the higher part of the hill across. But actually, we can see way down. We see the freeway and everything. So it's not an accurate picture, and that's what Debbie was saying too. It isn't an accurate picture. But I'd like to know, because another thing I want to know is you said that there's 40-some acres, and you're only going to be using how many?
Right, I don't recall the number.
What are you going to do with the rest of it? Are you going to later on in years add to it and make it a whole, hillside?
Okay.
I mean, our property, I hope we get a reduction in our property taxes.
In terms of the reflection, obviously I can't offer any guarantee there. All I can tell you is that, and again, these are issues we've been very, very concerned about, and the math, the physics of the reflection are going to be what guarantee or dictate the answer at the other end. And all I can tell you is in going to the people we keep going to, and going to Doug Berlin, who was PG&E solar expert before he became, was put on the staff of the Energy Trust of Oregon, all of these people are coming back and saying that it is physically impossible for that to happen. And the physics may provide that answer. I can't provide that answer otherwise. In terms of the site that ODOT has there, that is an old quarry site that ODOT benched for geostability. And right now, ODOT is using that as a storage area for maintenance facilities. They could use the whole site for storage for maintenance or other things if they so chose. The trees, Alice was out there on the site, and what you're dealing with up there are soils that are like this. That's why the wetland came, because they benched it and there was no place for the water to go.
It's really
just
thin
rock.
topsoil. Very thin topsoil.
Thank you. Since there are two ex-legislators and one current, I'm glad I got to ask the question that I'm surprised no one asked, so I'm going to do it. No, I'm not speaking. This time, this is to Mark. Mark, would you please answer this? We make laws, and one is here that does. The reason PGs has to go in this area, according to this presentation, let me ask my three parts, is because it's in their service area, and they evidently can't go outside their service area because of statute, Oregon statute. Am I correct?
ODOT cannot.
ODOT cannot. You could? Okay, you could. Now, I'm having fun now. That brings me to the next part. I heard the word efficiency. So if you were to build 3 times this size in eastern Oregon where there's more sun, I'm probably wrong. You're going to teach me that hillside in the valley is going to get more power than where they get sun 300 and some days out of the year. And my point would be there is even if it were outside your service district, we need to change the law because it should happen because you said, quote, PP&L, and I'm friends with them as well, have not shown that much interest. So I'm taking efficiencies, grid, I know what you have at Willamette Falls, lines, etc. And when I weigh it, I'm thinking maybe we need a statutory revision while a legislator's here. Because if we have a problem with where we can do these things for ODOT, it seems to me you shouldn't be bound by just your service district, but rather where you get the best production and where Oregonians receive the greatest benefit. By the way, that could be ODOT and others. If you had 3 times, 4 times, where it's sunny all the time, then we need to look at our statutes because I'm guessing, Mark, I don't know, those statute was written not relatively recent, or was it? Yes.
But let's get all the questions, then we can give Mark the mic.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like your response because my thinking's probably off on this, but it seems to me we may be antiquated in how we're handling this for the good of all Oregon. If PP&L isn't going to develop solar farms, when I think most of us, how many would support solar farms in eastern Oregon? Well, my point is we would because, one, you generate more sun, and you could generate more power. So if we need to look at the statute while Bill Kinnemer's here, then we need to look at the statute. That's my comment and question.
Thank you. Now you have a chance to respond.
Okay. Well, as we look at our job as PGE is to serve you, and because you demand power, and that's our job, and so we have to serve you. We want to serve you, and so that's the point. And we work towards trying to find the lowest cost of power to serve you with. And if you look at the variety of resources, I mean, we've talked about coal, we've talked about nuclear. We've talked about a variety of different sources, and they all have their pluses and minuses, and they all have their issues. The one thing about solar, and the reason I love it so much, is the fact that you can put it almost anywhere. That it's a solid state. There's no pollution. You basically can slap up a solar panel pretty much anywhere and make electricity. And that's the whole idea. I mean, I'm Distributed Resources Manager at PGE. My job is to help customers put little power plants at their property. And so, but we don't want, a belching, wood-fired power plant on your property, but we want clean, renewable energy. And so solar is probably the best example of that. Now, would we like to put a power plant in Eastern Oregon? That's a possibility. When we've looked and analyzed the cost, it hasn't come in cost effective that's because of the grid. I mean, with all the wind development that's gone out in the gorge and so forth, it's very difficult now to get power from the east side of the mountains over to the west side. And so you're probably going to see, PGE and perhaps others looking at additional transmission lines over the Cascade Range so that we can bring power over to where we have the majority of our customers. Well, we have all our customers here, but I mean the majority of Oregon is here on the west side of the Cascades. So, that's the problem, is that those transmission lines right now are constrained, and the people who are subscribing to the power flowing through those have filled them up, so you can't squeeze another solar array on there. So that's one issue. The other issue is the fact that the cost is very inexpensive if we put a solar project, relatively speaking, in terms of the power supply side, because we can utilize the customer's existing transformers and existing power lines, because we can put the power there. We don't have to build a special line. And that's what you have to do if you locate a solar power plant in the middle of Eastern Oregon, is that you have to build, in addition to the expensive cost of putting the solar in, you have to build the transmission line over. So yeah, will it happen someday? I'm convinced it's going to happen someday. But for today, in order to keep costs low, what you want to do is try and keep the power as close to the customers as you can. And the only way you're going to do that is with green technology, to be able to do it. That's what's so exciting about it. So, if you're interested in putting solar on your roof, or you happen to live on a ridge and you want to put a wind turbine up, that's my job, is to try and help you do it. And that's why I'm here to try and do the same thing for ODOT.
Well, and from ODOT's perspective, it is much less expensive to have it here than paying for the wheeling costs and the other costs of moving it from the other side of the mountain. The other issue there is that when the power is moving across those transmission lines, it leaks. You're losing power. Obviously, siting more transmission lines is going to be raising a whole host of issues, particularly if we're working through the gorge, for visual impact and impact on local properties. And as one who's been responsible for making state decisions on transmission lines, I can tell you that this is nothing compared to those in terms of the challenges one confronts. But you're also losing power along the way, and by having this resource located here in the solar projects that ODOT is looking at, we will save. We will save enough energy to supply all the electricity needed for 27 all-electric homes, which will be about half the people.
We're just about to the end. Does anyone have any questions that hasn't been asked that you're burning to ask? Debbie, are you wanting the last word?
Okay. Well, a couple of things. One is I just wanted to make sure that obviously we know that power doesn't go straight to ODOT because they light at night and the power has to go on the grid during the day. And this is the equivalent of powering 170 homes is what your literature says. So it just needs to be near about 170 homes somewhere, and this is a very much heavier population than that. Then also I just wanted to, for those of you that missed the Westland meeting last night, there were a lot of people at that meeting, and I just wanted to recount for you that they had us stand up for opposed, for or against, and 75% of the people that stood up that night were opposed to this project. Not opposed to solar, just opposed to this project. And I just wanted to say for many of the Westland residents that will live near this project, even the Westland mayor, spoke at the end about how their letters and emails did not give her the picture that in person, that when they were there, she said there's fear in the voices of these people. And they talked about fire danger and security issues and the concerns about them opening up a rest stop that was closed years ago because of crime and other problems at that restaurant. So there are people that are in Westland that are also opposed to this, and I wanted to make sure that people know that this is not just an Oregon City concern, and that the vote was not unanimous last night either. It was split 4-1 in favor of going forward in interest of this project. I wish that Oregon City would take a more active position in this, because I think that they need to better represent the citizens of Oregon City, even if it's just symbolic. And then I'm also concerned for technology, because technology is obsolete so quickly that in 5 years this could be obsolete, but we're going to deal with the visual impacts of this for 25 to 40 years maybe. And it's only going to be the world's largest for however many months or a year or something until somebody's going to build the next one. And then my concerns about visual impacts are, right now they're saying that the panels will all be hiding behind themselves on the flat areas. Well, that won't be true in Phase 2 because they'll be all over the hillside. And then my last comment is that that I want assurances that you'll remove the photos that are both on the Westland website and on the pamphlets that you're handing out that are basically incorrect, very incorrect information, the views from Oregon City, because they're not, and everyone pretty much here can testify to the fact that they're incorrect views until you take some better pictures or do something. So I think that, unfortunately, that's gone out to the city of Westland quite at the meeting and all kinds of places, but at least they need to be removed because they're not correct. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Debbie. And again, you do have our commitment to go back, take a look at those, take a look at the pictures. Part of the issue is, again, is going to be magnification. So what we'll do is, and I'd like to ask Lynn if we can get ODOT's professional photographer, Gary Weber, to go out and take a look and go back and take a look at these things. We'll get the best of the folks, and so you're dealing with the most talented, not necessarily Megan and her camera that we had out there.
I'm a little apprehensive.
And I can understand. And yeah, and all I can tell you is we'll go back and take another look, and I think that's what you asked us to do. I can tell you that I have no doubt whatsoever about the importance of us being here tonight and listening to you. The mayor has expressed to me personally and to all of us just how important it is to her, and I have the world of regard for Alice and your commission. That's why we're here. That's why we'll continue to have conversations. That's why we are going to go back and carefully note the kinds of issues and questions that have been raised, and to make sure that we have done as well as we possibly can at addressing those questions. And in the end, folks are going to have some choices to make. No matter what we do, wherever one does it, there will be those choices to make. And those are fair things for a society like ours to have to weigh and to make those kinds of choices, which you understand far better than I ever will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. On the path, the proposed path that is going to go on the ridge up in West Lynn, is that part of this solar project, or are they two separate issues? Can we have the panels without having the trail?
For those of you who aren't familiar with the question, that site that is over there, there's an interest on the part of West Lynn in connecting trails or something. I don't necessarily understand all the elements of this, and apparently the Parks Master Plan had a trail going across. And so the community leaders asked ODOT if they would be willing to work with them on siting a trail from the site. And ODOT said that they would be more than happy to work with the community in doing that, but that is not an integral part of the solar project. That is a community decision, and it is a Westland interest. It is a Westland decision.
Yes, and that brings me to I think the closing remarks that I wanted to make. Oregon City partners with ODOT on many projects in the community, and we partner with PGE on projects within the community. And I'm really proud of our community tonight for the way that you have asked such thoughtful questions, because the things that we wish to do need to be safe, they need to be healthy, They need to improve the community. They need to be the best of technology, and we, the people, need to understand them. We need to understand the impacts in every way. And it's only because of the work that you're doing, the activism you're doing, and Debbie and Ed have really led the charge in this, and it always takes leaders like that who will rally the community to get those answers that we need. And so therefore, when we have projects in which we partner, that we want them to be the best that they can be. And I don't think we've ever worked with a project that hasn't evolved because of community input. So stay with it and make sure that you're satisfied, but again, at the end of the day, it's going to be a balancing act. We all said we love solar power, and so to make this the best project, if it's going to go forward, making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, I think is our civic responsibility. So I thank you very much for taking the time to come, and I thank ODOT and PGE, for the three of you, for allowing us to grill you, which is, of course, our right, and I think the discussion was very good. Please join me in giving them